So, hello, please introduce yourself.
My name is Dr. Ahmad Husaini, and I am an intern working at Kasturba Hospital in Manipal, Karnataka, which is one of the most renowned institutions actually in coastal Karnataka, and it caters to not only coastal Karnataka but interior Karnataka and North Kerala. So it's actually been at the forefront of the fight against COVID over here.
Okay, so as an intern, how difficult it was for you over there?
I started my internship, I remember, on the 23rd of March, and it was suddenly like we were like I had left the college a month ago after my final exams of MBBS, which I passed. And then when I came back, it was a different world. It seemed like something which was post-apocalyptic, because we came back to find an enemy against us, which we didn't know what were his tactics, and what how it operated, and how it spread, and how do we fight it. We had no idea. So literally, it was we were pushed into an abyss. And I was luckily posted for the first 2 months in general surgery, and that was a department which had completely stopped at that time, so I got time to ease into it. But many of my friends, and especially the nursing staff, they didn't know what was happening. And so it was completely something unknown for us, and the patients actually suffered the most, because people who had their own surgeries, they had their own treatments which go on monthly, suddenly they stopped, and a lot of people had to suffer because of it. So it was completely unprecedented for us and the nursing staff and the supporting staff and the patients too. So yeah, it was quite the experience.
And what were your senior doctors' instruction to you guys?
Senior doctors, we knew pandemic was that the elderly people or the older people were the ones who were more at risk. We knew that one thing for sure. So consequently, what happened was the senior doctors went into the background, and the junior staff and the junior doctors came into the forefront. So the senior doctors, in effect, would come to the hospital for their rounds for about maybe a couple of hours, and then go back. And then from the background, they would guide us regarding the latest protocols, regarding how we should keep ourselves safe, regarding what are the latest guidelines of WHO and ICMR regarding COVID. So they were obviously very helpful, but they were always working from the background, and at the foreground were the interns and the postgraduates. And I have to give it to the postgraduates who fought on the front lines, because they have really done a marvelous job by putting themselves at risk. And the patients, I mean, what can you say? Obviously, every patient wants to see a senior doctor, and when they see us, they're not the happiest, okay, because we are coming for rounds and we are taking care of their medications and everything. But in the end, we had to make things work. So, and in the end, even the patients got more accustomed to seeing younger faces, seeing our faces, and getting used to us, and getting used to getting treatment for us. And they put their confidence in us. And actually, I saw that relationship building over March, April, and May. So that was interesting for us.
And how were your shifts like?
Oh, my shifts have varied a lot. Some days you have that run-of-the-mill 8-hour shift. Then I've had 12-hour shifts. Then I've had 24-hour shifts, and I've even had a few 36-hour shifts. It depends on how that particular department works, and what the system is and how the rotations are. But I would say that was overworked at any time, because they always give us ample rest. But I'm in a like a more rural setup. But those who are in Delhi, in Bombay, in Bangalore, in the larger cities, they have worked literally like so hard, and they haven't even gotten ample rest after their shifts, and they started working again. So hats off to them. I've actually had it much easier than them.
Wow. And what were your thoughts like being in that situation, in that environment? Like, what were you thinking?
One thing was that I thought no doctor should have a sense of victimization, that, oh, why do I have to do this? Or whether I never felt like I'm doing a favor unto anyone by doing this, because for the simple reason that in any profession, when there's a crisis, so many professions work with crisis. So, for example, if there is I'm sorry, there was a call coming. So, if there's a firefighter, or if there's, for example, an electrician, or in any profession, if you have a crisis and you have to come up to it and fight against it, so you have to rise up to the occasion. So I thought this was our time. there hasn't been a pandemic for really long, and now there's a pandemic, and we have to step up. It's not a favor we're doing onto anyone, it's our duty. So that's what I felt. So that was one of the main things.
Well, that is something very true which you said over there. And were you stressed because of it? I mean, not just you, like everyone with you, all the interns, and because it was a new environment, it was a new situation, and even the senior doctors were, uncertain about things. You guys are so new, so
For sure. When we came back suddenly, we were never used to everyone wearing masks or ever wearing gloves or anything like that, and suddenly keeping distance and, talking to the patient via shield. And suddenly there was a lot of, I mean, it bordered on paranoia actually, because for me personally, I live in a hostel and we live in hostels, and younger people are not so predisposed to, worsening of the coronavirus affliction. But people who have to go back and see their grandparents, who have to see their parents, who have comorbidities, those people have actually a lot to think about before putting themselves in at risk. And they did it flawlessly, and they did it with so much responsibility that they didn't shy away from their duty, nor did they put themselves into unnecessary risk. So I felt that was quite interesting, and I think more than me, my parents were more stressed about my situation, but everything turned out fine. But throughout the course of the year, a lot of my friends, a lot of my colleagues, a lot of my seniors turned out positive. Some of them had few symptoms, some of them worsened a little, but everyone made it out of it. And I was one of the lucky ones who has not developed any symptoms of the coronavirus. But yeah, it was very stressful for those times when you find out this friend turned out positive, that friend's having, they're having some of the other manifestation of the coronavirus. So yeah, it was stressful, but I think more for our parents than for us.
yeah. So, what were your family's thoughts?
I mean, my dad was always slightly more macho about it, but my mom and my grandmom and my granddad, they were very worried actually about it. And but the interesting thing was, my dad was always like, they always wanted me to follow precautions and get into things. But when I finally got into rural postings last month, it's an interesting anecdote. I went to a nearby town, okay, where I had to stay and work for a month. And over there, I had to take care of coronavirus patients in a rural ICU. So I would be like literally in the midst of them, because right now I've not been in critical care with coronavirus patients because my general medicine postings are next up. They haven't started yet. That is when you interact with patients in a critical care
Mhm.
scenario. So when I told my parents that I'll be actually interacting close up with very critical ICU patients, I saw my dad, who's usually goes like, it's okay, you just take your precautions. Is that suddenly he was like, तुम पीपी पहनो okay तुम पीपी खरीदो तुम पीपी I'm like no they give PP but I told them government PP is not as good as private PP. He's like no you buy your own PP. I don't care, you do this, you wear an extra shield, I don't care. I was like okay fine. So when it comes to their own children, every parent is protective. So that was
That is
quite
very
a
true.
change that I saw.
That is very true. And yes, you guys are doing a marvelous job. And I feel like everybody in this fight, in this situation, is like equally necessary. And especially the doctors, the interns, and every single one of you. And it was really great talking to you. And I know that you have your shifts and everything, and you just got off duty. And thank you for taking time out of this
No
and giving this interview. Thank you so much.
problem. Thank you.